A Doctor of Philosophy, PhD, D.Phil, Latin, Philosophiae Doctor or Doctor in Philosophia, is a terminal degree that usually denotes the highest level of academic achievement in a given discipline and is awarded following a course of graduate study and original research. The name of the degree is most often abbreviated PhD, or, at times, as PhD in North America, pronounced as three separate letters. The University of Oxford uses the alternative abbreviation D.Phil. PhDs are awarded for programs across the whole breadth of academic fields. Since it is an earned research degree, those studying for a PhD are required to produce original research that expands the boundaries of knowledge, normally in the form of a dissertation, and, in some cases, defend their work before a panel of other experts in the field. In many fields, the completion of a PhD is typically required for employment as a university professor, researcher, or scientist. In the context of the Doctor of Philosophy and other similarly titled degrees, the term philosophy does not refer to the field or academic discipline of philosophy, but is used in a broader sense in accordance with its original Greek meaning, which is love of wisdom. In most of Europe, all fields, including history, philosophy, social sciences, mathematics, and natural philosophy, later known as natural science, other than theology, law, and medicine, the so-called professional, vocational, or technical curricula, were traditionally known as philosophy, and in Germany and elsewhere in Europe the basic faculty of liberal arts was known as the Faculty of Philosophy. A PhD candidate must submit a project, thesis, or dissertation often consisting of a body of original academic research, which is in principle worthy of publication in a peer-reviewed journal. In many countries, a candidate must defend this work before a panel of expert examiners appointed by the university. Universities sometimes award other types of doctorate besides the PhD, such as the Doctor of Musical Arts, DMA, for music performers, Doctor of Juridical Science, SJD, for legal scholars, and the Doctor of Education, EdD, for studies in education. In 2005, the European University Association defined the Salzburg Principles, 10 basic principles for third-cycle degrees, doctorates, within the Bologna process. These were followed in 2016 by the Florence Principles, 7 basic principles for doctorates in the arts laid out by the European League of Institutes of the Arts, which have been endorsed by the European Association of Conservatoires, the International Association of Film and Television Schools, the International Association of Universities and Colleges of Art, Design, and Media, and the Society for Artistic Research. The specific requirements to earn a PhD degree vary considerably according to the country, institution, and time period, from entry-level research degrees to higher doctorates. During the studies that lead to the degree, the student is called a doctoral student or PhD student. A student who has completed any necessary coursework and related examinations and is working on their thesis/dissertation is sometimes known as a doctoral candidate or PhD candidate. A student attaining this level may be granted a candidate of philosophy degree at some institutions or may be granted a master's degree en route to the doctoral degree. Sometimes this status is also colloquially known as ABD, meaning all but dissertation. PhD graduates may undertake a postdoc in the process of transitioning from study to academic tenure. Individuals who have earned the Doctor of Philosophy degree use the title Doctor, often abbreviated DR or DR, although the etiquette associated with this usage may be subject to the professional ethics of the particular scholarly field, culture, or society. Those who teach at universities or work in academic, educational, or research fields are usually addressed by this title professionally and socially in a salutation or conversation. Alternatively, holders may use postnominal letters such as PhD, PhD, or D.Phil, depending on the awarding institution. It is, however, traditionally considered incorrect to use both the title and postnominals together, although usage in that regard has been evolving over time. In the universities of medieval Europe, study was organized in 4 faculties, the basic faculty of arts, and the 3 higher faculties of theology, medicine, and law, canon law and civil law. All of these faculties awarded intermediate degrees, Bachelor of Arts, of Theology, of Laws, of Medicine, and final degrees. Initially, the titles of Master and Doctor were used interchangeably for the final degrees. The title Doctor was merely a formality bestowed on a teacher/Master of the Art, but by the late Middle Ages the terms Master of Arts and Doctor of Theology/Divinity, Doctor of Law, and Doctor of Medicine had become standard in most places, though in the German and Italian universities the term Doctor was used for all faculties. The doctorates in the higher faculties were quite different from the current PhD degree in that they were awarded for advanced scholarship, not original research. No dissertation or original work was required, only lengthy residency requirements and examinations. Besides these degrees, there was the licentiate. Originally this was a license to teach, awarded shortly before the award of the master's or doctoral degree by the diocese in which the university was located, but later it evolved into an academic degree in its own right, in particular in the continental universities. According to Keith Allen Noble, 1994, the first doctoral degree was awarded in medieval Paris around 1150. The doctorate of philosophy developed in Germany as the terminal teacher's credential in the 17th century, circa 1652. There were no PhDs in Germany before the 1650s, when they gradually started replacing the MA as the highest academic degree. Arguably, one of the earliest German PhD holders is Erhard Weigel, Dr. Phil Hab, Leipzig, 1652. The full course of studies might, for example, lead in succession to the degrees of Bachelor of Arts, Licentiate of Arts, Master of Arts, or Bachelor of Medicine, Licentiate of Medicine, or Doctor of Medicine, but before the early modern era, many exceptions to this existed. Most students left the university without becoming Masters of Arts, whereas regulars, members of monastic orders, could skip the arts faculty entirely. This situation changed in the early 19th century through the educational reforms in Germany, most strongly embodied in the model of the University of Berlin, founded in 1810 and controlled by the Prussian government. The arts faculty, which in Germany was labeled the Faculty of Philosophy, started demanding contributions to research, attested by a dissertation, for the award of their final degree, which was labeled Doctor of Philosophy, abbreviated as PhD. Originally this was just the German equivalent of the Master of Arts degree. Whereas in the Middle Ages the arts faculty had a set curriculum, based upon the trivium and the quadrivium, by the 19th century it had come to house all the courses of study in subjects now commonly referred to as sciences and humanities. Professors across the humanities and sciences focused on their advanced research. Practically all the funding came from the central government, and it could be cut off if the professor was politically unacceptable. These reforms proved extremely successful, and fairly quickly the German universities started attracting foreign students, notably from the United States. The American students would go to Germany to obtain a PhD after having studied for a bachelor's degree at an American college. So influential was this practice that it was imported to the United States, where in 1861 Yale University started granting the PhD degree to younger students who, after having obtained the bachelor's degree, had completed a prescribed course of graduate study and successfully defended a thesis or dissertation containing original research in science or in the humanities. In Germany, the name of the doctorate was adapted after the philosophy faculty started being split up, e.g. Dr. Rare. Nat. For doctorates in the Faculty of Natural Sciences, but in most of the English-speaking world the name Doctor of Philosophy was retained for research doctorates in all disciplines. The PhD degree and similar awards spread across Europe in the 19th and early 20th centuries. The degree was introduced in France in 1808, replacing diplomas as the highest academic degree, into Russia in 1819, when the Dr. Nauk degree, roughly equivalent to a PhD, gradually started replacing the specialist diploma, roughly equivalent to the MA, as the highest academic degree, and in Italy in 1927, when PhDs gradually started replacing the laurea as the highest academic degree. A new PhD graduate from the University of Birmingham, wearing a doctor's bonnet, shakes hands with the Chancellor. Research degrees first appeared in the UK in the late 19th century in the shape of the Doctor of Science, DSc or SCD, and other such higher doctorates. The University of London introduced the DSc in 1860, but as an advanced study course, following on directly from the BSc, rather than a research degree. The first higher doctorate in the modern sense was Durham University's DSc, introduced in 1882. This was soon followed by other universities, including the University of Cambridge establishing its SCD in the same year and the University of London transforming its DSc into a research degree in 1885. These were, however, very advanced degrees, rather than research training degrees at the PhD level. Harold Jeffreys said that getting a Cambridge SCD was more or less equivalent to being proposed for the Royal Society. In 1917, the current PhD degree was introduced, along the lines of the American and German model, and quickly became popular with both British and foreign students. The slightly older degrees of Doctor of Science and Doctor of Literature/Letters still exist at British universities, together with the much older degrees of Doctor of Divinity, DD, Doctor of Music, D.Mus, Doctor of Civil Law, DCL, and Doctor of Medicine, MD. They form the higher doctorates, but apart from honorary degrees, they are only infrequently awarded. In English, but not Scottish, universities, the Faculty of Arts had become dominant by the early 19th century. Indeed, the higher faculties had largely atrophied, since medical training had shifted to teaching hospitals. The legal training for the common law system was provided by the Inns of Court, with some minor exceptions, see Doctors' Commons, and few students undertook formal study in theology. This contrasted with the situation in the continental European universities at the time, where the preparatory role of the Faculty of Philosophy or Arts was to a great extent taken over by secondary education. In modern France, the baccalaureate is the examination taken at the end of secondary studies. The reforms at the Humboldt University transformed the Faculty of Philosophy or Arts, and its more recent successors such as the Faculty of Sciences, from a lower faculty into one on a par with the faculties of Law and Medicine. Similar developments occurred in many other continental European universities, and at least until reforms in the early 21st century, many European countries, example Belgium, Spain, and the Scandinavian countries, had in all faculties triple degree structures of bachelor, or candidate, licentiate doctor as opposed to bachelor master doctor. The meaning of the different degrees varied from country to country, however. To this day, this is also still the case for the pontifical degrees in theology and canon law. For instance, in sacred theology, the degrees are Bachelor of Sacred Theology, STB, Licentiate of Sacred Theology, STL, and Doctor of Sacred Theology, STD, and in canon law, Bachelor of Canon Law, JCB, Licentiate of Canon Law, JCL, and Doctor of Canon Law, JCD. Until the mid-19th century, advanced degrees were not a criterion for professorships at most colleges. That began to change as the more ambitious scholars at major schools went to Germany for 1 to 3 years to obtain a PhD in the sciences or humanities. Graduate schools slowly emerged in the United States. In 1852, the first honorary PhD in the nation was given at Bucknell University in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania to Ebenezer Newton Elliott. 9 years later, in 1861, Yale University awarded 3 PhDs, to Eugene Schuyler in philosophy and psychology, Arthur Williams Wright in physics, and James Morris Whitton, Jr. in classics. Over the following 2 decades, Harvard University, New York University, Princeton University, and the University of Pennsylvania, also began granting the degree. Major shifts toward graduate education were foretold by the opening of Clark University in 1887, which offered only graduate programs, and the Johns Hopkins University, which focused on its PhD program. By the 1890s, Harvard, Columbia, Michigan, and Wisconsin were building major graduate programs, whose alumni were hired by new research universities. By 1900, 300 PhDs were awarded annually, most of them by 6 universities. It was no longer necessary to study in Germany. However, half of the institutions awarding earned PhDs in 1899 were undergraduate institutions that granted the degree for work done away from campus. Degrees awarded by universities without legitimate PhD programs accounted for about a third of the 382 doctorates recorded by the U.S. Department of Education in 1900, of which another 8 to 10% were honorary. The awarding of PhD as an honorary degree was banned by the Board of Regents of the University of the State of New York in 1897. This had a nationwide impact, and after 1907, less than 10 honorary PhDs were awarded in the United States each year. The last authenticated PhD awarded honoris causa was awarded in 1937 to Bing Crosby by Gonzaga University. At the start of the 20th century, U.S. universities were held in low regard internationally, and many American students were still traveling to Europe for PhDs. The lack of centralized authority meant anyone could start a university and award PhDs. This led to the formation of the Association of American Universities by 14 leading research universities, producing nearly 90% of the approximately 250 legitimate research doctorates awarded in 1900. With one of the main goals being to raise the opinion entertained abroad of our own doctor's degree. In Germany, the national government funded the universities and the research programs of the leading professors. It was impossible for professors who were not approved by Berlin to train graduate students. In the United States, by contrast, private universities and state universities alike were independent of the federal government. Independence was high, but funding was low. The breakthrough came from private foundations, which began regularly supporting research in science and history. Large corporations sometimes supported engineering programs. The postdoctoral fellowship was established by the Rockefeller Foundation in 1919. Meanwhile, the leading universities, in cooperation with the learned societies, set up a network of scholarly journals. Publish or perish became the formula for faculty advancement in the research universities. After World War II, state universities across the country expanded greatly in undergraduate enrollment, and eagerly added research programs leading to master's or doctorate degrees. Their graduate faculties had to have a suitable record of publication and research grants. Late in the 20th century, publish or perish became increasingly important in colleges and smaller universities. Detailed requirements for the award of a PhD degree vary throughout the world and even from school to school. It is usually required for the student to hold an honors degree or a master's degree with high academic standing, in order to be considered for a PhD program. In the US, Canada, India, and Denmark, for example, many universities require coursework in addition to research for PhD degrees. In other countries, such as the UK, there is generally no such condition, though this varies by university and field. Some individual universities or departments specify additional requirements for students not already in possession of a bachelor's degree or equivalent or higher. In order to submit a successful PhD admission application, copies of academic transcripts, letters of recommendation, a research proposal, and a personal statement are often required. Most universities also invite for a special interview before admission. A candidate must submit a project, thesis, or dissertation often consisting of a body of original academic research, which is in principle worthy of publication in a peer-reviewed context. Moreover, some PhD programs, especially in science, require 1 to 3 published articles in peer-reviewed journals. In many countries, a candidate must defend this work before a panel of expert examiners appointed by the university. This defense is open to the public in some countries, and held in private in others. In other countries, the dissertation is examined by a panel of expert examiners who stipulate whether the dissertation is in principle passable and any issues that need to be addressed before the dissertation can be passed. Some universities in the non-English speaking world have begun adopting similar standards to those of the Anglophone PhD degree for their research doctorates. See the Bologna process. A PhD student or candidate is conventionally required to study on campus under close supervision. With the popularity of distance education and e-learning technologies, some universities now accept students enrolled into a distance education part-time mode. In a sandwich PhD program, PhD candidates do not spend their entire study period at the same university. Instead, the PhD candidates spend the first and last periods of the program at their home universities and in between conduct research at another institution or field research. Occasionally a sandwich PhD will be awarded by two universities. It is possible to broaden the field of study pursued by a PhD student by the addition of a minor subject of study within a different discipline. A career in academia generally requires a PhD, although in some countries it is possible to reach relatively high positions without a doctorate. In North America, professors are increasingly being required to have a PhD, and the percentage of faculty with a PhD may be used as a university ratings measure. The motivation may also include increased salary, but in many cases, this is not the result. Research by Bernard H. Casey of the University of Warwick, U.K., suggests that, over all subjects, PhDs provide an earnings premium of 26% over non-accredited graduates, but notes that master's degrees already provide a premium of 23% and a bachelor's 14%. While this is a small return to the individual, or even an overall deficit when tuition and lost earnings during training are accounted for, he claims there are significant benefits to society for the extra research training. However, some research suggests that overqualified workers are often less satisfied and less productive at their jobs. These difficulties are increasingly being felt by graduates of professional degrees, such as law school, looking to find employment. PhD students may need to take on debt to undertake their degree. A PhD is also required in some positions outside academia, such as research jobs in major international agencies. In some cases, the executive directors of some types of foundations may be expected to hold a PhD. A PhD is sometimes felt to be a necessary qualification in certain areas of employment, such as in foreign policy think tanks. U.S. News and World Report wrote in 2013 that if having a master's degree at the minimum is de rigueur in Washington's foreign policy world, it is no wonder many are starting to feel that the PhD is a necessary escalation, another case of costly signaling to potential employers. Similarly, an article on the Australian Public Service states that credentialism in the public service is seeing a dramatic increase in the number of graduate positions going to PhDs and master's degrees becoming the base entry-level qualification. The Economist published an article in 2010 citing various criticisms against the state of PhDs. These included a prediction by economist Richard B. Freeman that, based on pre-2000 data, only 20% of life science PhD students would gain a faculty job in the US, and that in Canada 80% of postdoctoral research fellows earned less than or equal to an average construction worker, $38,600 a year. According to the article, only the fastest developing countries, e.g. China or Brazil, have a shortage of PhDs. In 2022, Nature reported that PhD students' wages in biological sciences in the U.S. do not cover living costs. The U.S. higher education system often offers little incentive to move students through PhD programs quickly and may even provide incentive to slow them down. To counter this problem, the United States introduced the Doctor of Arts degree in 1970 with seed money from the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. The aim of the Doctor of Arts degree was to shorten the time needed to complete the degree by focusing on pedagogy over research, although the Doctor of Arts still contains a significant research component. Germany is one of the few nations engaging these issues, and it has been doing so by reconceptualizing PhD programs to be training for careers outside academia, but still at high-level positions. This development can be seen in the extensive number of PhD holders, typically from the fields of law, engineering, and economics, at the very top corporate and administrative positions. To a lesser extent, the UK research councils have tackled the issue by introducing, since 1992, the EngD. Mark C. Taylor opined in 2011 in Nature that total reform of PhD programs in almost every field is necessary in the US and that pressure to make the necessary changes will need to come from many sources: students, administrators, public and private sectors, etc. Other articles in Nature have also examined the issue of PhD reform. Freeman Dyson, Professor Emeritus at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, was opposed to the PhD system and did not have a PhD degree. On the other hand, it was understood by all his peers that he was a world-leading scientist with many accomplishments already under his belt during his graduate study years, and he was eligible to gain the degree at any given moment. The UNESCO, in its International Standard Classification of Education, IST, states that programs to be classified at IST level 8 are referred to in many ways around the world, such as PhD, D.Phil, D.Lit, D.Sc, LL.D, doctorate, or similar terms. However, it is important to note that programs with a similar name to doctor should only be included in IST level 8 if they satisfy the criteria described in paragraph 263. For international comparability purposes, the term doctoral or equivalent is used to label IST level 8. In German-speaking nations, most Eastern European nations, successor states of the former Soviet Union, most parts of Africa, Asia, and many Spanish-speaking countries, the corresponding degree to a Doctor of Philosophy is simply called doctor, and the subject area is distinguished by a Latin suffix, example drmed. For Doctor Medicini, Doctor of Medicine, Doctor Rare. Nat. For Doctor Rerum Naturalium, Doctor of the Natural Sciences, Dr. Phil. For Doctor Philosophia, Doctor of Philosophy, Dr. Ire. For Doctor Iris, Doctor of Laws. In China, doctoral programs can be applied directly after obtaining a bachelor's degree or applied after obtaining a master's degree. Those who directly apply for a doctoral program after a bachelor's degree usually need 4 to 5 years to obtain a doctorate and will not be awarded a master's degree during the period. The courses at the doctoral level are mainly completed in the first and second years, and the remaining years are spent doing experiments/research and writing papers. At most universities, the maximum duration of doctoral study is 7 years. If a doctoral student does not complete their degree within 7 years, it is likely that they can only obtain a study certificate without any degree. China has 13 statutory types of academic degrees, which also apply to doctorate degrees. Despite the naming difference, all these 13 types of doctoral degrees are research and academic degrees that are equivalent to PhD degrees. These 13 doctorates are: Doctor of Philosophy, for the discipline of philosophy, Doctor of Economics, Doctor of Law, Doctor of Education, Doctor of Literature, Doctor of History, Doctor of Science, Doctor of Engineering, Doctor of Agriculture, Doctor of Medicine, equivalent to a PhD in Medical Sciences, Doctor of Military, Doctor of Management, Doctor of Fine Arts. In international academic communication, Chinese doctoral degree recipients sometimes translate their doctorate degree names to PhD in discipline, such as PhD in Engineering, Computer Science, to facilitate peer understanding. The first doctoral degree in South Africa was issued in 1899 by the University of the Cape of Good Hope, now University of South Africa or UNISA, and the first PhDs were conferred in the 1920s by the University of Cape Town and the University of the Witwatersrand. Owing to the influence of British colonialism, South African higher education bears profound similarities to the modern UK university system. South Africa boasts 26 state universities, all of which offer doctoral degrees. Presently, only 2 private institutions offer accredited PhDs, including the South African Theological Seminary and St. Augustine College of South Africa. Typically, South African colleges and universities abbreviate Doctor of Philosophy with either PhD or D.Phil. South African PhD programs require both a 4-year undergraduate and a relevant graduate degree. Certain PhD programs require pre-existing knowledge of research languages and/or field experience. Some programs require applicants undergo an interview and/or provide references, a curriculum vitae, and letters of recommendation. Typically, PhD applicants must furnish a provisional research proposal which discloses the basic trajectory of their area of interest. English competency is a universal requirement. Akin to PhD programs in the UK and in the Netherlands, South African PhD programs consist of a research thesis or dissertation produced under the supervision of a subject matter expert. South African PhD programs are designed to result in a substantial piece of scholarship that has undergone critical evaluation through peer review. Unlike PhD programs in many other African countries or the US, South African PhD programs rarely involve coursework and are undertaken through rigorous and semi-independent research. Most South African PhD programs are designed to be completed within 3 to 6 years. Some UK universities, e.g. Oxford, abbreviate their Doctor of Philosophy degree as D.Phil, while most use the abbreviation PhD, but these are stylistic conventions, and the degrees are in all other respects equivalent. In the United Kingdom, PhD degrees are distinct from other doctorates, most notably the higher doctorates such as D.Litt, Doctor of Letters, or DSc, Doctor of Science, which may be granted on the recommendation of a committee of examiners on the basis of a substantial portfolio of submitted, and usually published, research. However, some UK universities still maintain the option of submitting a thesis for the award of a higher doctorate. Recent years have seen the introduction of professional doctorates, which are the same level as PhDs but more specific in their field. Most tend not to be solely academic, but combine academic research, a taught component or a professional qualification. These are most notably in the fields of engineering, EngD, educational psychology, DEdPsych, occupational psychology, DOCC-Psych, clinical psychology, DClinPsych, health psychology, DHealthPsych, social work, DSW, nursing, DNP, public administration, DPA, business administration, DBA, and music, DMA. A more generic degree also used is DProf or ProfD. These typically have a more formal taught component consisting of smaller research projects, as well as a 40,000, 60,000 word thesis component, which together are officially considered equivalent to a PhD degree. In the United States, the PhD degree is the highest academic degree awarded by universities in most fields of study. There are more than 282 universities in the United States that award the PhD degree, and those universities vary widely in their criteria for admission, as well as the rigor of their academic programs. Typically, PhD programs require applicants to have a bachelor's degree in a relevant field, and, in many cases in the humanities, a master's degree, reasonably high grades, several letters of recommendation, relevant academic coursework, a cogent statement of interest in the field of study, and satisfactory performance on a graduate-level exam specified by the respective program, example GRE, GMAT. Depending on the specific field of study, completion of a PhD program usually takes 4 to 8 years of study after the bachelor's degree. Those students who begin a PhD program with a master's degree may complete their PhD degree a year or two sooner. As PhD programs typically lack the formal structure of undergraduate education, there are significant individual differences in the time taken to complete the degree. Overall, 57% of students who begin a PhD program in the US will complete their degree within 10 years, approximately 30% will drop out or be dismissed, and the remaining 13% of students will continue on past 10 years. The median age of PhD recipients in the US is 32 years. While many candidates are awarded their degree in their 20s, 6% of PhD recipients in the US are older than 45 years. The number of PhD diplomas awarded by US universities has risen nearly every year since 1957, according to data compiled by the U.S. National Science Foundation. In 1957, U.S. universities awarded 8,611 PhD diplomas, 20,403 in 1967, 31,716 in 1977, 32,365 in 1987, 42,538 in 1997, 48,133 in 2007, and 55,006 in 2015. PhD students at U.S. universities typically receive a tuition waiver and some form of annual stipend. Many U.S. PhD students work as teaching assistants or research assistants. Graduate schools increasingly encourage their students to seek outside funding. Many are supported by fellowships they obtain for themselves or by their advisors, research grants from government agencies such as the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health. Many Ivy League and other well-endowed universities provide funding for the entire duration of the degree program, if it is short, or for most of it, especially in the forms of tuition waivers/stipends. At some universities, there may be training for those wishing to supervise PhD studies. There is much literature available, such as Delamont, Atkinson, and Perry, 1997. Denham and Scott, 2001, have argued that the worldwide growth in research students has been matched by the increase in the number of what they term how-to texts for both students and supervisors, citing examples such as Pugh and Phillips, 1987. These authors report empirical data on the benefits to a PhD candidate from publishing. Students are more likely to publish with adequate encouragement from their supervisors. Whisker, 2005, has reported that research into this field distinguishes two models of supervision: the technical rationality model of supervision, emphasizing technique, and the negotiated order model, which is less mechanistic, emphasizing fluid and dynamic change in the PhD process. These two models were first distinguished by Acker, Hill, and Black, 1994, cited in Whisker, 2005. Considerable literature exists on the expectations that supervisors may have of their students, Phillips and Pugh, 1987, and the expectations that students may have of their supervisors, Phillips and Pugh, 1987, Wilkinson, 2005, in the course of PhD supervision. Similar expectations are implied by the Quality Assurance Agency's Code for Supervision, Quality Assurance Agency, 1999, cited in Wilkinson, 2005. PhD graduates represent a relatively small, elite group within most countries, around 1.1% of adults among OECD countries. Slovenia, Switzerland, and Luxembourg have higher numbers of PhD graduates per capita, as illustrated here. For Slovenia, this is because MSc degrees before Bologna process are ranked at the same level of education as PhD. Without the MSc, Slovenia has 1.4% PhD graduates, which is comparable to the average in OECD and EU 23 countries. Thank you for watching this video.